Hey everyone. This week, JC, Brandon, and I are kicking it old school with Octopath Traveler. It's this new JRPG that tries to capture the essence of the originals that we loved as children. So save up your BP and be ready to boost in this episode of Tilted.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tilted, the exceptional podcast for the average gamer. I'm one of your hosts, JC, with the usual suspects, Brandon and Chip. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, bub?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Getting excited to talk about Octopath Traveler. We got a special treat this week. Normally, Chip and I have been heading some of the conversations, but this week it's the Brandon show.
So,
Brandon dug deep, and he's the one who's going to be telling us all about it as Chip and I just kind of stumble through the wilderness that is Octopath Traveler.
yeah. So, Octopath Traveler is a brand new JRPG that just came out. It's out on the Nintendo Switch, and it basically is made with a bunch of um, old 8-bit textures and stuff like that. Obviously, HD versions of it, but pixelated art and stuff like that to try and capture the essence of like the old versions of JRPGs that you might have played back on like the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis and stuff like that. And the whole point of the game is basically well, as the name implies, there's 8 different paths that you can take, which is there are 8 main characters throughout the entirety of the game, and they each have their own story to tell. And so when you start the game, you pick one character, and then you basically get to travel around the world of Austera, and there's like different types of lands and stuff like that, different areas, forest, woods, flatlands, cliffs, all sorts of stuff. And the whole time you're just traveling around doing stuff, and then you can go to the other starting towns that have the 7 other characters in it, pick them up, and form an adventure party, and then go away with everyone's story.
Sweet. So once you get started, or you start with your crew, let's talk a little bit about some of the combat elements because I think there's some pieces that really make this interesting. If you want to just go ahead and break down the combat for us.
All right, so the game kind of goes back to the old style of turn-based combat that a lot of games used to use, but it was um Octopath Traveler was developed by Square Enix and Silicon Studios, which are 2 companies that actually made the Bravely series, Bravely Default and Bravely Second. And they actually took some of the keys for the combat that they used that made those games popular and brought them over and kind of mixed them up a little bit. But for the most part, when combat starts, a lot of enemies have a bunch of boxes underneath them that have question marks. Well, there's different types of magic and weapons that you can use throughout the game, such as swords, spears, arrows, daggers, axes, and then magic is all your elements, so fire, ice, wind, lightning, holy, and dark. And then as you're using those attacks, certain enemies will be weak to certain types of weapons or magic, and you actually have to determine what they're weak to, and then once you figure out that weakness, it'll show up in one of the little boxes down at the bottom. And then in addition to that, they also have shields with a number on it, and that number represents how many hits they can take with something they are weak to. And once that shield is broken, they actually entered a state called break, and any turns that they had upcoming in the current round or the next round, they automatically lose that turn and can't take an action. And they essentially become much weaker to any sort of attack. They still take bonus damage from any of their weaknesses, but you can hit them with essentially anything and they'll take full damage with it.
Now, when you enter into a battle, what is the deal with health, or is there a health bar, or do you just walk in and you're just hoping to God how much health they have?
Uh, you don't get to see their health bar. It obviously has your information, so you can see like all of your characters' HP, SP, and BP, which we'll get to in a second. But something I actually like that they did with this is, like I said, they don't show you the enemy's health bar outright, but they do give you a hint as to how much health the enemy currently has. So when you're targeting them, it'll actually show you the name of the enemy underneath them, and the color of their name changes based on how much health they have. So obviously at the beginning of the fight, it'll start out as bright white because they're full health. But as you start to get closer to like half HP for them, it'll start turning yellow. And then the closer you get to killing them, it'll actually start turning red and start to become like a really dark red when they're like just about to die. So,
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Um, so there's one more nuance to combat I think that we want to get into, and that's boosting.
yep. So the BP that I mentioned stands for battle points. And this is part of the system that they brought over from the Bravely series, where you can actually save up these BP, the battle points, and based on how many you have, you can boost your attacks. The mechanic's literally called boosting, and it will either increase the amount of damage the attack does, or it'll change like um, how many hits the attack does. So like there's some that'll just straight up it'll be like a two hit attack and nothing will change, but it'll increase the damage that those two hits do. Or there might be um, some abilities like if you do a standard attack, if you boost um, up to the max, which is 4 times, then you'll get 4 standard attacks rather than just your 1 standard attack per turn. But there's different abilities in the game that actually lets you like share BP and stuff like that. So if you have one character that has like a full stock and has this particular move, then they can share it with someone who else who might be able to deal much more damage by using that full amount of BP than someone than what the other person might be able to do. So it's the whole battle system is really neat, be like managing turn order and stuff like that, because you can defend as well, and that'll rearrange the order that people go in for the next turn. So you have to be really conscientious of like who's going when, like who's strong, who has what weapons to break like these particular opponents and stuff like that. So you want to constantly try and get it so that you can go before them in a new round and then break them because then they miss out on 2 turns technically because they don't get one for the current round and then they lose one for the next round. So that basically gives you 2 full rounds to just unload all of your damage right onto them.
It sounds really intricate, doesn't it, Chip?
Yeah, well, so I want to ask a question. So, I'm not a big JRPG guy. I've played a few that I've enjoyed, but I'm not super into them. One of the big things is like the turn-based combat itself, but that it's a lot of them eventually get to a point where it's just like super grindy and it gets stale for me. So like I was gonna ask, is this like really complex and intuitive changing combat make it this that staleness of having to sit and grind like go away?
Um, Kind of. You still kind of have to grind a little bit because you can only have 4 people in your party at a time. So anyone who's not in your party doesn't gain experience or anything like that. So generally you'll have to go and swap them out and eventually level them up. So there's no like really consistent party that you can hold on to like go through the game with. Um, because like I said, everyone has their own story, so like they'll each have their own level requirements, and you have to have that person in the party to do their story quests. So you have to make sure they're up to snuff and basically grind levels with them. But generally, once you have like a few people leveled up, you can always just pull that low level person in, go into a high area. You have 3 people that are more than capable, so as long as your fourth person stays alive, you can easily get 2, 3 levels per battle and catch them up.
Yeah.
So, but
Is there a level cap?
I think 99 is the typical level
That's the
cap,
classical,
so
yeah.
that's probably where it stops. I personally have not hit one, so I couldn't tell you.
Oof. Um, Going off of that, do you want to jump into some of the characters?
Yes, we can talk about that. So, like I said, there's 8 characters. You get to pick one from the start, and they all have their own separate story. One thing I've noticed so far that may be disappointing to some people. It hasn't really bothered me that much now that I've played the game a little bit. There's no like major overall story for like the whole thing. It's literally just there's these 8 people, they're all part of like a traveling party and they have their own stories. And so it's just like they kind of like recruited these people to like help them along their story and do whatever. So the first one we'll start with is Ophelia, and she's basically the cleric, so she does like a lot of the healing and light-based damage and stuff like that. And so one thing is that each person has their own, what they call path action and talent. And basically, there's noble and rogue path actions. Noble obviously being the good ones, and rogue being the evil, more uncommon or evil ones. And her path action is guide, and she can actually take like townspeople and stuff like that, and they'll follow her around. And so there's like some side quests where someone's like, "Oh, I want to go meet up with like my husband in another town," and so like you'll have to use either Ophelia or someone else who has a similar path action, and have them follow you, and then you have to take them to that town and talk to their significant other, and then it's like, "Oh, well, thank you for bringing me here." So you actually have to like shuffle people around the world using this, and then her one of her talents is summon, which basically if she has someone following her, she can actually call them into combat and they will help you out as well. They usually attack like randomly and they'll have like a set skill and set strength, so sometimes you'll get weak people who won't really do much, and then later in the game you will find people who just like completely wipe the floor. And then so after Ophelia is Cyrus, and Cyrus is the scholar, so he's basically your mage, just giant AoE fire, ice, lightning based attacks. And then his path action is scrutinize, and so he can basically go up to different NPCs and stuff like that, and using scrutinize, he'll gain certain information. So if you're on a quest and someone might know something, you can go up and scrutinize them, and then it'll tell you the details about like what this person may have done or what they might know, and then now you have that information to go talk to someone else in the quest to continue it. And then his talent, one of the most useful things in the game, is study foe, and basically when you start combat, it'll reveal one weakness for all the enemies if they have any that you haven't discovered yet. It's been like the most useful thing in the game so far because you can immediately start chipping away at people and not have to sit there and play a guessing game to try and figure things out.
Yeah, I imagine that would be really annoying as you go into a fight and you just use an attack and you're like, well, I hope there's a weakness of theirs, and then you just
Yeah,
kind of keep cycling through until you find something that works.
Well, I kind of like that. It adds an air of
Hmm.
of mystery to the game. That's like when I was saying before about grinding. I couldn't tell you how many times I've tried to play JRPGs and I've just spent hours in the wilderness killing insert animal or low level thing here, just spamming one button. So if
hmm
you're fighting, you now have to like it's like I don't know what this thing is. I have to learn about it and figure it out. And I
yeah,
like it.
and
It's like
there's
knowledge checks from Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
Yeah,
would I
that
know
reminded
what
me of
this
that
thing
too.
can get hurt by?
And yeah, they have like different levels of enemies and stuff too. So like one might be, um, I don't know, I guess there's all sorts of weird stuff. So like there's like a Rat Man or something like that, and it might be like Rat Man 1. But then as you get further into the game, they obviously start getting stronger. So there's like Rat Man 2, Rat Man 3. So there's like different variations, and they all have different like weaknesses and stuff like that. So you have to keep up and make sure that
That's pretty cool if they keep evolving, but I'm sorry, I just pictured like Peter Pettigrew, 8-bit, like in a JRPG.
He, they look much more like rats than people,
Ah, that's
but
that's
they are
when I
large bipedal rats with crossbows that can use magic. So
oh, so it's Twitch.
sometimes, not always.
Sometimes no, it's cool that they evolve. I like it. Keep you on your toes.
Yep. Uh, and then we'll obviously once you figure out a weakness, next time you go into combat, it'll still be there. So as you keep fighting things and you have the study foe talent, you'll actually eventually just discover everything. He also has a skill where you can analyze and it'll tell you a weakness. So if you actually boost that, it shows you more weaknesses at a time. So that's an example of like where it'll do multiple effects rather than just being stronger.
Pretty cool.
Is the game big enough where even though you run into certain enemies again and again, do they differ enough so that it's not like you don't have your own mental knowledge of knowing that you run into a rat man that they're weak to holy damage and dark damage? Like, is the universe big enough, or is there a tightly knit group?
So basically, what I've discovered so far playing through it, it seems like there's layers to the world, I guess to put it in a certain perspective. And so there's like it's really weird to explain, but there's obviously 8 different sections, one for like each of the different characters and stuff like that. So when you're first starting, a lot of the stuff kind of has like 1 or 2 weaknesses based on the character that started in that area. Because obviously, if you start as that character, they're not going to throw you a bunch of stuff that has literally no weaknesses to like everything that you have, because it'd kind of be unfair. You would never get anywhere. But in those 8 sections, there's different rings like around because the whole world is kind of like circular in the way it does everything, and so there's like rings inside those layers. So like the first ring is like where everyone starts, and it's a bunch of like the weaker monsters. So it's like it'll be like one creature like levels 1 to 3, and then like you'll have a different mix of creatures for that particular area. So like one person starts in a snowy area, so it's like all sorts of like snow bears and like snow creatures and stuff like that that you would find there, compared to someone that might be in the marshland where you might see like frogs and other similar creatures. But then as you start completing those levels and start going into like the outer layers, so like the second ring, then all of those creatures start to hit like the 3 to 5 range, and then they'll introduce more creatures and stuff like that. So you'll see some things in like the second level of an area that you wouldn't see in the first level. And then I haven't gone past the second ring yet because I'm still working on a lot of stuff there, and I'm sure at like the third and fourth rings, there's like all brand new stuff that you wouldn't see in any of the inner rings.
That's
Cool.
cool. Yeah, you want to jump into the next character?
Yep. So next is Tressa, who is the merchant of the game, and she's kind of like a support in that she does have some healing, but it's mostly just for herself. But she's very good at like bringing in cash for your characters to like buy items and stuff like that. Where one of um, her talent is Eye for Money, where it'll actually give you more money if she's in combat and you win the battle than compared to if she wasn't in it. And as you're just walking around the world, changing from like area to area, she might just randomly spot money. So it'll like you could be walking out in like the field or something like that and go back into town, and then when you enter town, it'll be like Tressa found such and such money that a poor lost soul dropped or something like that.
That would
It's
be
pretty
great in
funny.
real life.
Hey,
Yeah.
boss, look, $100. This is great.
Yeah, that's essentially what she does. As you change zones, there's a chance that she just randomly finds money, picks it up, and hey, now you have 500 to 1,000 extra leaf, as they call the currency in the game.
How important is currency in that? Do you find items or do you purchase items?
Most of your item getting will be through purchases, and you definitely need the money because prices jump up quick. So in like the first few towns, a lot of the good like second level items are easily like 12 to 18,000 leaf, whereas like the first level item is only 2,000. So like there's a huge gap between like items. So it's a really difficult balancing act to like make sure you have enough money to buy these and to buy like your healing items and like all of your accessories for like bonus HP or bonus MP or whatever. to make sure that you have everything. So there's definitely a lot of make sure you get your money from somewhere.
Hmm.
Was she in your party a lot?
She is not in my party a lot, actually. I can tell you about my party when we finish all the
All
characters.
right.
So,
You want to get into Ulbrich?
yep. So Ulbrich is your typical big muscular warrior guy. Literally, job is warrior. So he's got like a bunch of HP. He does like a good mix of like damage and tanking. His path action is challenge, and so basically, if somebody's like standing in a door, and if you need to get into a building and somebody's standing in front of the door and they're in your way, you can actually challenge them, and then it'll be a one-on-one duel between that person and Ulbrich, and you actually have to fight them. And if you beat them, that'll knock them out, and they'll move out. They'll get moved out of the way, and then you can go in the building.
What an honorable warrior.
Hey,
That's so
man, you
that's so dumb.
you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
You get
Keep
out of my way. No, then I shall kill you.
keep in mind that this is actually the noble path action version of this. So the noble and rogue path actions are literally the same things. They're just different names for and on different characters. So like some of the ones that we went through, actually I think we went through all the noble ones already. Yeah, we did. Ophelia, Cyrus. No, Cyrus is rogue. Sorry. So you'll see coming up shortly, somebody has literally like the exact same skill as. Actually, the next person we'll talk about will have the exact same skill as Ophelia, but it'll be the rogue action instead of the noble one.
So the
Uh,
difference being like one's like the good way and the one's like the bad way,
right.
or
If
like
you do,
lawful versus chaotic kind of thing.
yeah,
D&D.
if
Okay.
you do noble actions, there's no like downside to doing them. They just take place. But if you do the rogue ones, and you fail, you actually hurt your reputation in the town. And so like you might,
That's cool.
so
That
like,
makes sense though, I guess. Like I walk up to JC and like, "Hey man, I'm gonna fight you," and then JC beats me. He's like, "Well, I'm a punk then."
so
More
yeah.
or less.
I'm not 100% sure what happens if you have like a few tries before like your reputation's like really bad and needs to be repaired at an inn, or tavern, I think it is actually. Um, but you just basically pay like a whole bunch of money and it fixes uh your notoriety, I guess. But I think the downside is like it's a lot harder to do a lot of things in town, so like things are become more expensive.
Mhm.
Um, if there's like anyone that you have to challenge to like get out of the way, they become harder fights and stuff like that.
That's cool. That's a
That's
cool
cool.
little mechanic.
Yep. Next up, we have my starting character. Side note, do not pick this as your starting character unless you really want to play the game on hard mode, is Primrose, and she has the job dancer, and she is essentially pure support plus dark magic. Like she gets daggers to attack for for like her standard attack, and then she has dark magic, and then all of her other abilities buff people's um, physical attack and defense, and their elemental attack and defense. And then she has one extra one that does random effects. And so like that is all she has. So it gets really difficult if you are not prepared to
I
play the game.
I just picture you like by yourself without a party being like, I wonder what this spell does. And she just goes, "My friends, have your defense go up." And then she just looks around just like, "Oh,
Well,
Right.
a lot of her dances are single target, so it'll you pick someone, so
all right,
it'll
fair enough."
you would only use them on her at the time being. So like you obviously can buff your own elemental attack and then
Yeah.
go dark magic, and you'll be doing more than what you would if you didn't. But obviously you don't have much variation in attacking or magic because you only have dark as your element and you only have daggers as your attack.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough. Cool.
but her path action is allure, so obviously she's a dancer, so she's trying to impress the guys, and She does the same thing as Ophelia, where she'll have somebody follow her around, and then she can summon them into battle to basically fight and stuff like that. And then obviously, if you fail, you hurt your reputation in the town because it's the rogue path action.
She dances so well. Somebody just like, I have to follow her. I gotta make sure she's okay.
That's actually exactly what it is because the starting town that she's at, she's actually considered the best dancer in the town. And like people have come like all around, like all the rich people have come around the world to like see her perform and dance.
I love JRPGs. I love
Oh,
them
this
so
game's
much.
amazing.
Side note, her being a dancer actually has nothing to do with her story, and her story is extremely good. She is not who you think she is. So,
Just
Shut up.
that little drop of
yeah.
check it out.
Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say she's like the emperor's daughter that like ran away or something. So she's like a deity that just likes to dance. Yeah, see,
You'll
look at
have to
him.
you'll have to play the
I,
game, find out.
yeah,
Just
I'm
a
gonna go. I'm
deity.
gonna go with one of the two classic JRPG tropes. Is either she's like the daughter of the emperor who like she like ran away because she didn't want to be a princess, or she's like a god or ancient being in like man form in human form. It's a classic JRPG.
It is neither of those two.
Dang, am I close? Am I on the right track?
One of them is close.
Bet you it's the emperor's daughter one.
Spoiler cast.
Yeah, sorry. Spoilers. All right, who's next?
Uh,
Alphin.
Alphin Greengrass, and he is the apothecary. Are you okay there?
Are you okay with Greengrass?
I
Is that?
love this game because I look at the show notes and what he does and
I mean,
stuff. Keep going.
he's an apothecary, right? So like,
Yeah.
why don't just make him a girl and name him Mary Jane at that point? I mean, I'm just saying.
Anyway,
Brandon, please continue, Brandon.
Alphin is actually like one of the stronger characters in the game. Obviously, they tried to make all the characters like equal in strength, but
Yeah.
Alphin has easily proven himself as like one of the best for certain things. So, as the name Apothecary implies, he's very good at healing, curing status ailments, and stuff like that. He's also he also randomly has ice attacks, like ice magic and stuff like that for whatever reason. I don't know. But his path action is Inquire, and so he does the same thing as Cyrus, but obviously he's just kind of like politely asking questions, whereas Cyrus is like supposed to be super smart and like the Sherlock Holmes type, so he just kind of like deduces things from looking at people.
Okay.
So Alphin's a little bit nicer in his things, which is why he has the noble action. But his talent is Concoct, and basically he can mix two different items together to get different effects. So there's like a bunch of different seeds and dusts that you can pick up. Seeds are single target and dust are AoE, and then you mix them with it's like usually the items are like essence of something or essence of whatever, and then you mix it with either seed or dust, and that'll change like what effect happens. So there's off the top of my head, I know there's injurious seed and injurious dust, and so obviously if you use those, it's going to cause damage or something negative to your opponents. And I forget what the ones are that are beneficial to you, but there's a subset that are like good for like healing you and stuff like that. But at level like 15 to 20ish, I've already got Alphen to drop a full heal of max HP, 9,999, and that's like level 15. And everyone only has like 800 to 1,000 health at that time. So just to give you an idea of like how strong Alphen can be, it's really strong.
That's such a waste, though. Like it's so cool that he drops stuff like that
Oh,
so
everyone
early.
was almost dead, and he fully healed them, and that probably got me through the boss fight that I was
But,
in.
but I mean, like 900 or what was it, nine thousand
It
nine
was,
hundred ninety nine?
yeah.
Overkill.
Hey, I won the boss
It
fight,
worked. Hey, it
so.
worked. I'm just saying. I think it's funny. Makes me laugh.
All right, so next up is Therian. His primary job is the thief. He does a lot of dagger-based combat and is very uh, physical-based. So if you can break weaknesses and stuff like that, he can start putting out like a lot of damage. His path action is Steal, which is the opposite of Tressa. Tressa, I don't think I mentioned, is Purchase, and you can go up to townspeople and like purchase different items from them. Like some of them will have weapons, some of them will just have like healing items, stuff like that. Therion's the opposite. You just walk up, take it off them, good to go. See you later. Uh, and his talent, I don't know why he has this particular talent, but he does. There's certain chests in the overworld that are purple that kind of match like the outfit he wears, and you can only open them if Therion's in your party. So they usually have pretty good items in them, like it'll have like a bunch of money or like a strong weapon or something like that. So it's always good to try and pick them up when you can, but I don't know, just kind of there's like no real good thing for it other than that.
So now let me ask you this. So since they're the path action or the towns or whatever it is are like mirrored in all in the characters, just like there's a noble way and a non and a kind of underhanded way
Rogue,
to do
yeah.
things. Um, is there conflict in the characters, or doesn't it really matter?
Um, no, this is one of the major complaints I've seen about the game is there's actually no connecting reason of like why the characters are actually together.
They're just derping around
So
together.
they're just kind of like hanging out. There's no like real
Yeah.
Hmm.
party cohesion of like, hey, this is why we're all traveling together or something like that. That's why at the beginning I said it's just kind of like you pick your one main character and then you go around the world and you end up like recruiting these other people and then you do they help you with like your story, like what you're trying to accomplish, and then you help them with their story and what they're trying to accomplish. So like I said, there's no like unifying, hey, this is why we're together and like we got to go save Astera from like this giant evil that's like trying to ruin the world or whatever. It's just, hey, I'm Primrose and I have like this problem and I'm gonna help. I found these people and they're gonna help me get through my problems. Is like the
Okay.
main story. I mean, it's worked. It like I said, I haven't. Now that I've played the game for a while, I am actually not bothered by the fact that there isn't an overarching story because a lot of people's single story has actually kept me like really interested. Like a lot of everyone's story is pretty good so far and it's like super interesting and like really keeps you hooked and like wanting to find out what comes next. So,
Fair enough.
um,
Fair enough.
so last person to talk about I did not see this coming. Everyone always talks about like waifus and like best girl and stuff like that in
God.
JRPGs and all sorts of other games and anime and stuff. Haunted, I wouldn't say waifu material, but easily best girl in the game. I did not see this coming at all because I was just because Hana is a hunter, so basically she's been living out in the woods with like her group of people and stuff like that. She obviously goes hunting and basically is like very respectful of nature and stuff like that. But oh my God, in combat, damage out the wazoo. Like she annihilates like everything in her path. She has not left my party since I've picked her up. She does that much damage. It's insane. She can easily hit, for me currently, she can easily hit like 3 to 4 thousand damage like per turn. It's insane how much she can put out when you actually like push her. So basically, her path action is the opposite of Ulbrich's. Hers is called Provoke, where she actually challenges people again if they're blocking a door or something. But hers is the rogue action, so obviously failure is not good for you. But the main thing that's different between her and Ulbrich is Ulbrich gets to use like all of his warrior skills and stuff like that and his weapons and things. You do not get to use any of your weapons as Honnet. Instead, you get to use the beasts that you've captured and some of your hunter skills. So basically,
Oh, that's so cool.
Honnet's main talent is capture, and so if you're out fighting like creatures and stuff like that, you can't capture humans. We'll start off there because let's be real, that's not good. Um, if you're out fighting like different creatures and stuff like that, like one that I've found personally that I love is called Frostbear. Frostbear is love, Frostbear is life.
What kind of animal is it?
It's a giant bear.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just want to make sure. You never know with a JRPG.
It's true. Basically, Frostbear attacks with the staff weapon type, but it hits everything that it's fighting. I'm not sure if it's once or twice, but its strength is like a 5 or a 6, so each hit is easily like 1,000 damage or so. And if you boost it, it's just like skyrockets. So you can hit everything that you're fighting for like 2, 3,000 damage with Frostbear. And so basically, if you're provoking someone, you just pull out Frostbear. Frostbear will smack them over the head, break them, and then you just go to town with whatever other creatures you have. And yeah, there's one that I picked up recently. I think it was like Rat King or something like that.
Twitch.
And yeah, Twitch. Um, he does a triple attack. It's either with a bow or an axe, and each hit I can get to do 3,000 damage. So that's 9,000 damage on a single target. And you just walk around the world fighting creatures and you capture them. Like obviously you have to weaken them, or like if you break them and weaken them, you have a higher chance of capturing them. Like if you just start out at the beginning of the fight and
It's
you're up
like
against like
Pokemon.
something level 30 and you just throw a Pokeball, yeah. Well, she throws a net, but if you were to throw like a Pokeball at like a level 30 full health Pokemon, then your chances of catching it are pretty low. But if you weaken it, put it to sleep, then obviously your chances go up. Same thing with her. If you just walk into battle and you're like fighting a level 30 thing and you're level 30, your chances of capturing it are going to be like 3%. But if you get it weak and break it and then put it to sleep, then your chances might be 80 or something. And then you can even boost at that point and it pushes your chances up even higher. So yeah, she essentially plays Pokemon in Octopath Traveler, and oh my god, the amount of damage she can do is unreal. So that's where that comes from. Best girl, highly recommend always having Hana in your party. Easy mode for life.
Now, I want to point out first of all, she sounds like an awesome character, and the fact that you basically play Pokemon in this game
She
with
also
this
speaks
character is
like
cool.
old Shakespearean English too, which is also
Okay,
really interesting.
but here's my problem with. Here's where I find the flaw in the JRPG logic. Can't capture humans. That's a no go,
Yeah.
right? However, the sentient rat that's smart enough to make a crossbow. No, catch him. He's fine. He's fine.
Yeah. I don't have an answer for you on that one.
No, it's cool. She would definitely be
Yeah.
she'd be a starter. She'd be
I
the
was
LeBron James of my
I
team.
would personally was invested in like Primrose, and I thought Primrose was gonna be like the super fun one and was the starting character that I took. But I actually like kind of regret that now and wish I started with Haunted and just went from there. Because you actually get locked into having the first character you pick in
Hmm.
your party until you complete their storyline.
Okay. So now what's your party? Who's your party
My
specifically?
current party is Primrose, Haunted, and then I have like a rotating third person, and then Cyrus is my fourth. The third person is usually whoever's story I'm currently trying to do, or if that person's already in my party, then it'll usually be like Therian or Ophelia for healing or having the just the high physical damage with Therian and being able to open the chests should I run into one.
A whole lot of characters, man.
Yeah,
It is.
I do like some of the characters though. It seems like you could definitely have an interesting party around
Yeah,
it.
once you get later into the game, obviously you can kind of build like whatever party you want, but the main meat of the game where you're trying to like complete everyone's stories, they require you to basically rotate through people, which is fine because obviously you want to experience everyone's stories and stuff like that. And it'll kind of keep everyone together and leveled up, except for the person you started with, because they always go to go way above everyone. But it's neat. Fun fact, the first letter of everyone's name actually spells out the word Octopath.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. The order that we just
Oh
went.
my god.
The order that we just went spells out Octopath. Yep. Ophelia, Cyrus, Tressa,
I
Ulbrich, Primrose, Alphen, Therian, Honnet. Octopath.
I hate JRPGs so much.
I love that. I don't care
I
what you
hate
said.
them.
I think that's fantastic.
This is
That's
actually
just like
this is
oh
actually something else that they probably took from the Bravely series. Bravely Default and Bravely Second also had something special about their title screens as you were playing the game. I'm not going to say anything because they are both huge spoiler alerts if you do know about them. So if you plan on playing them, do not look up anything special about the title screens. Just play the game, find them, and be completely amazed because they're absolutely awesome and easily one of the best parts of the game, even though it's just the title screen.
Spoiler cast.
Yes.
Well, now that we got a good grip on the characters, do you want to give us a little bit of snapshot into the actual world itself and the 8 regions?
Sure. So, like I said, the main world is called Ostera, and then there's 8 regions that obviously is where the 8 characters come from. There's the Frostlands, Flatlands, Coastlands, Highlands, the Sunlands, Riverlands, Clifflands, and Woodlands. Uh, the Frostlands are where Ophelia starts, and it's basically just your giant, typical snowy, mountainous area. Um, the Flatlands are where I think that's where Cyrus starts. Not 100% sure actually. I think so. Not 100% sure. Coastlands or Flatlands? Yeah, I mean Flatlands. It's pretty obvious. Coastlands also pretty obvious. It's where a lot of like the ports and stuff like that, port cities, rivers, the ocean, things like that. That's where Tressa starts. Uh,
so
Highlands,
just to clarify real quick, the flatlands have a bunch of hills, coastlands are deserts, right?
yeah,
Okay, just making sure.
yeah. A lot of the
JC's
names,
face. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't.
a lot of the names are like pretty obvious into the
Yeah.
region itself. Highlands is obviously a bunch of mountains and stuff like that. That's where Ulbrich starts. Sunlands is just kind of flattish area, a bunch of deserts, stuff like that. Sun's always shining in that area. That's where Primrose is. Riverlands is right in between all of the mountains. It's kind of flat. It's a bunch of marshes and stuff like that. And then there's one big river that goes through the area. That's where Alphen's located. The Clifflands are. They kind of look like if you took like the Midwestern theme or like the Western theme of like old movies and stuff like that, and essentially put them in the cliffs. It's just like dry red rock everywhere. It's kind of like beat up old towns and stuff like that. And then like the higher up into the cliffs is like where the super rich people are, and then down towards the lower sections of the cliffs are where like all the poorer people are. And this is where Therian starts because he's a thief, so he's obviously towards the lower sections, stealing his way through life. And then last is the woodlands, which is where obviously you have thick forests and stuff like that, and where you will find Honnet at the beginning of the game.
Because she's
I
best girl.
Oh yeah. Definitely recommend starting Honnet. Definitely best physical damage output. Easily.
gotta say, I really enjoyed the region names.
Yeah.
Like you just look at them and you're like, okay, yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Like
Yep.
there's no
Yeah.
hidden
I mean,
names or meanings or anything like that behind it. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing. Cool.
simple as easy. If it
Yeah.
describes the area, then there you go.
Well, I've got to say, it sounds like a definite interesting game. Not my real cup of tea. JRPGs. I'm with Chip on the turn-based combat. It just doesn't do it for me. But if you were to put it on a rank of a 20-point scale, so 1 to 10, and basing it with a 0.5 in between, where would you put the game?
Uh, I'd probably easily say like 8.5 or 9. Like it is a really there's a few things that are kind of like missing from the game. Obviously, it would have been really neat to see like a central unifying story and see like a really good party interaction. They do have some party interaction where it's like small cutscenes where like two people will talk. So like maybe you do like part of Primrose's story that requires you to like it's like a short cutscene where she'll like go up on stage and like dance to like try and get somebody's attention or something like that. Then like after the whole cutscene's over, it'll say like press plus to I think it says banter or something like that, and then it'll have like somebody talking to Primrose, being like, "Oh wow, that was like a beautiful show," or like whatever, or like compliment her on her dancing or something. So like they have some inner party connections, but there's no like unifying like we're out to save the world kind of thing. So like that is a little bit of a drawback because I think a lot of people were expecting that. But after playing the game and playing like everyone's individual storyline, it's really not that big of a deal at this point because everyone's individual storylines have been great so far. So,
How many have you finished?
I am done. Everyone's chapter one, and I think five, maybe six out of eight of everyone's chapter two. And I'm not 100% sure because I've only heard this, but I think everyone has four chapters. There might be a little bit more, but obviously 4 times 8 is 24. So, and each chapter easily takes about like an hour and a half. So like you easily get like a decent chunk of time in the game.
You want
Go
to double
ahead.
check your math there, Brandon?
Oh, did I? Sorry. 8 times 4 is 36.
No! Oh
No,
my
oh my God. I'm done, dude. I'm done. I'm tired. I'm sick. I'm not thinking.
man. Times tables are hard.
Yeah.
Well, well,
32.
Brandon.
On that note, on that note.
We really enjoyed kind of taking the back seat and letting you tell us all about this JRPG, Brandon. I thought you did an amazing job. Chip, I don't know about you, but I really learned a lot.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a really good game. I'm not opposed to trying JRPGs.
Mhm.
It just they have to be very involving in order for me to like them. So maybe I'll give Octopath Traveler a shot and see what it's all about. I have to buy a Switch first, though. Okay, maybe I won't, but if I had a Switch, I definitely would. Definitely would.
I love it.
I'm 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 thinking about it because the game does look really really good.
It's very reminiscent of old JRPGs. Like I said, it's very similar to the Bravely series, which is one of my favorite series. And I was never a fan of turn-based RPGs. I have always enjoyed being able to do whatever I can in combat, so like run around, dodge, jump, attack whenever, stuff like that. But just the whole like boost mechanics and stuff like that make the combat way more interesting. So,
Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing with us, man. We appreciate it, and interested to see what other JRPGs are coming out soon. Get you back in the driver's seat.
sounds good.
All right, everybody. Well, that's all we got for you today. Hope you enjoyed the show, and remember to take a deep breath, get your emotions under control, or you might just get tilted.